You can see the topic, right? It's one that's very near and dear to me because I went through it. The struggle was real, right? And if you've ever found yourself, unfortunately, in this situation like I was, you will say the same thing. The struggle is real. It can feel like a ton of bricks, right, crushing in on your chest when you're buried in debt, all right? So the title of the show is In Debt, Stressed Out, and Discontent. Now picture this, me crying at my kitchen table because I could not break the addiction of using credit cards. I hate to say it, and this is actually the first time that I've ever publicly verbalized it to anybody because I was so embarrassed by it. But that was me, right, at the kitchen table. This was 7 years ago. Just came to the realization, right, maybe like an alcoholic comes to the realization that they can't say no to booze. Well, I came to the realization that time and time again, even though I vowed to stop it, I would just keep spending on stupid consumer spending stuff, right? Here's the crazy part. So I was playing the credit card flip game. So if you guys have ever been in that situation or you played that game, you know that you just keep flipping, right, your credit card debt to a new one that has a low introductory APR. Well, I was able to do that, right? So I would always keep it at 0% or like 1.9%, and then 6 months or 12 months later, I'd flip it to another one. At one point, I had over $200,000 worth of credit card credit available playing the flip game. And so, you know, I would just keep flipping them, keep it at zero, never miss the payment, because the deal is if you miss a payment, then your APR goes way up, right? So I did that. This was for about 12 straight years, right? I was doing that. And I would carry about 40 to 50K credit card balance. And my wife and I would have this discussion like every 2 to 3 years. We would come to the table. We would say, hey, look, we need to get a hold of this. We would vow to do it. It would last about 12 to 14 months. And then we would just go right back to kind of our bad habits, right? Of being lazy, putting stuff on credit cards. So I don't know if you're in that boat, but I imagine you may know someone, right, who's in that boat. And unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans carry some type of consumer debt. In 2015, get this, the average U.S. household carried over $15,000 of credit card debt and paid over $6,000 in credit card interest. So, and a lot of times people actually underestimate or they underreport how much credit card debt they actually have. One study showed that most people underreport it by 150%. And so, again, you may not be that person, but I imagine you may know someone who kind of is in that boat. Like you ask them, are you in debt? And they say, yeah, a little, but they don't actually really know. And that's a lot of folks are in that boat. And so, you know, people get into debt for many reasons. The average income, right, is not rising like it used to. The cost of living expenses, they're outpacing wages. And so, I mean, there are some real situations that are causing that. And people, again, go into debt for many reasons. So I'm not here to say that either you or myself, right, is bad for getting into debt. I just know that the weight that was lifted from me off of my shoulders, off of my wife and I, it felt amazing. And it's when we finally decided, we said we're going to do something about it, right? So we came to the table. I shared earlier, I was bawling like a baby. And we finally said, look, this is it. You know, we have to stop playing around, basically. And so what do? And you've probably heard other people do this. We got our scissors out. We cut up all of our credit cards. And that's when the freedom started. So it didn't just start actually when we got out of debt. It actually started when we came to the table and we made a decision that we were going to do something about it, right? We were going to stop playing games. And so for us, that's when the freedom started. Now, it took us 3 years, right? 3 years to get out of that pile of debt. But we bootstrapped. We paid every credit card off. You know, again, like I said earlier, up to that point, I'd never missed a payment before. And so we were able to pay all of our credit cards off and put $10,000 in emergency fund within 3 years. And so during those 3 years, I mean, we definitely lived lean. We wanted to honor the debt that we had. So in other words, we are the debtors, I guess. So we wanted to pay those off. We thought it was the right thing to do. But so we were there. We lived that for 12 years. That cloud hung over my head. Didn't feel like I could get rid of it. It didn't really work until we cut everything up and we said we're done, right? And so the title, right, is In Debt. Second one is Stressed Out. Look, if you've been in debt, you know the type of stress that it can cause. Stress on marriage, right? Being in debt is crazy. In fact, the number one reason for divorce in marriages is financial stress. And I can remember when we were going through that, definitely there was a wedge between my wife and I. At times, right, we actually wanted to kind of, I don't know, we just almost wanted to give up. And I think a lot of it had to do with that financial stress, right, that was pounding on us. And so, yeah, it just feels like it's choking you out, right, at times. Then my third piece is this, that I think when you're in debt, right, you got that stress on you, it actually leads to discontentment. The deeper you go into debt, I think the more discontent you become. You spend on a vacation, then at the end of the vacation, what do you have? You got more debt now that you got to deal with. In fact, I would like to see a study that's done between debt levels and relation to discontent levels. I bet that those two correlate very closely. So that's kind of the bad news, right? The good news is this, and this is what I'm going to end the blab on today. The good news is that you and I live in an amazing country where if we take action and make a decision, that we can usually defeat the debt monster that's in our life. And I say usually within 3 to 5 years, no matter how far deeply in debt you are. So these are the three things that we did. We made a decision to cut up the credit cards. Again, going back to the alcohol and alcoholics scenario. Look, if you're an alcoholic, don't think you can get away with having alcohol in your house. It's going to be too tempting, right? Same thing, like if you're in debt, right, and it's credit card related, don't think that you can get away with not using credit cards if you're addicted to spending like I was and still have them around. So you got to cut them up. You got to do something with them. Second one is this, track your spending. Look, most people have no idea what they're spending their money on, right? If you're in the chat room right now, I hope you have a good handle on that. That was like the second thing we had to do. We actually had to track, right, what we were spending our money on. And it'll blow you away when you actually begin to look at what you're spending your money on. And the third thing was this. We came up with a plan of action. We came up with a budget, okay? And so we had to do those other two things. And then the third one was coming up with a budget. And then the fourth thing, and this is what you and I have, which is incredible. We can use Amazon to cut down our debt. If I was selling on Amazon back then, I think I could have cut my debt down. And instead of 3 years, I think it would have took me a year and a half. And so, I still say we're just in the first inning of getting started selling online. And if you bootstrap, right, and if you spend more time and you hustle, you can find amazing buys with really good margins that will sell through fast. And that's taken into consideration if you have less capital. You have less capital, then use more time to find those better buys. And you can do that. And I think if you're smart about it, you can really help yourself dig out of debt even quicker than like a typical 3 to 5 year plan that most people can get out of. So, yeah, that's kind of the story that I just want to share with you today. Look, amazing freedom happens. And I'm sure, again, if you're in there, you've experienced that. Amazing freedom happens when you're able to move that debt cloud out of your life. It totally changed the outlook. You go from like depressed and feeling like you're enslaved to now all of a sudden feeling free. I can take a job over here if I want to take that one. I can go over here. You know why? Because I don't have any debt and I have money in the bank. And that's a great feeling to have. And so I just encourage you guys, if you're in debt, maybe, and I'll end with this. So I just had a phone call 2 days ago from another Amazon seller. And he called me, and within like 2 seconds, he was crying. He was bawling, pretty much uncontrollably. And because he's experiencing the very thing that I just shared with you about my life, him and his wife are kind of going through it. They haven't been able to get a handle on their spending. And so their credit card debt is going way high. He was just basically reaching out and saying, hey, look, you know, what can I do? Because when you get in that kind of debt, it'll suffocate you. And it almost feels like it's hopeless, right? And so, you know, him calling me was great. That's a first step. You know, you kind of acknowledge it, and then you can take steps after that. So I was very hopeful and happy that he called me and he was able to kind of share, because I asked him, I said, hey, do you got anybody around you? Because he lives like in a number of states away. So do you have anybody around you that you can share this with? He's like, no, I really don't. I said, look, you need to get a support system, you know, someone there locally that can kind of help you, right? Walk through this, help you go through these steps. And so I'm hopeful that he can do it. He's a really good Amazon seller. So he has the income there. It's not about how much he makes. It really comes down to how much he spends. And so if he can lower the spending, right, below how much he makes, he's going to be okay. And he's going to be able to get out of that debt. All right. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Thanks a lot for hanging out. Continue to if you're in debt, continue to work hard at trying to get out of it. And if you're selling on Amazon, keep selling that stuff, right? Keep making Amazon make you money. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate every one of you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.